Hello and welcome. This is Daniel Choy for the Sunday evening edition of Arirang News. To those of you who were part of the mass Lunar New Year exodus, congratulations on making it back home safe. You're probably at home recharging on this last day of the 5-day weekend for our viewers in Korea. But if you are planning to step outdoors, do remember to wear a mask or carry one handy, as yellow dust advisories are issued in most parts of the country, more even as we speak. And now let's start with some discouraging digits for our newscast. Some unfortunate news for those who are looking to get a job this year. Korean firms aren't likely to recruit many new employees. A poll by the Bank of Korea released Sunday says the Employment Business Survey Index was 94 at the beginning of the year, the highest in nearly 5 years. The Employment BSI measures whether companies feel they have enough employees. A higher digit means they feel the current number is sufficient. Korea's BSI has been falling since late 2009, but had started to pick up pace last year. Over 35% of Korea's largest firms by sales say they will hire a combined 22,000 new employees this year. That's down 2.3% from a year ago. Foreign investors and owner families of South Korean business groups have a lot to smile about, as local firms, under growing pressure to share more of their earnings with investors, bump up their dividend payouts. According to Jebel.com, the country's top 4 business groups, Samsung, Hyundai, SK, and LG, have announced plans for fiscal 2014 dividend payouts at an estimated 7.73 trillion won. That's about $6.99 billion. That's a 28.1% rise from a year earlier. Foreign investors took 3.81 trillion won, an increase of 34.7%. The Big Four conglomerate's owner family members are estimated to have received a combined 398 billion won in dividends, a 46% rise. In contrast, payouts to other minority shareholders, excluding institutional investors, are estimated at 1.38 trillion won, an increase of 13.6%. As people in Korea wrap up their extended Lunar New Year's holiday, miles away there are brave volunteers in West Africa still fighting the deadly Ebola virus. While Korea's third and final support team is about to begin a new operation on Monday, back here in Korea, medical staff from the first team speak about their experiences. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
It was a time of fear, sadness, exhaustion, and hope for the Korean medical team that was dispatched to Sierra Leone, one of the 3 West African countries most affected by the, in many cases, deadly Ebola virus. Members of the first Korean team, who are returning to their daily lives after a 3-week quarantine that ended a week ago, recently spoke to reporters about their month-long mission. They said it was a very meaningful experience to have done what they, as ordinary Korean citizens, did. But it didn't come without hardship. They began their day with a routine of putting on their personal protective equipment, which was one of their most crucial tasks.
With the mask, the hood, and the face shield, your whole face feels tight, and hearing your own breath from that close doubles the tension.
But the hardest part by far was letting their patients go.
The first patient I saw die was a little child. That was a shock to me.
But as the team leader said, it was all worth it, as the country needs to upgrade its capacity to deal with epidemics like Ebola.
With Korea's high medical standards for dispatching support teams for treatment and research, I believe we will help in contributing to the global public's health.
The third and final team is scheduled to begin a 1-month mission near Sierra Leone's capital of Freetown on Monday. The number of Ebola cases has been on the decline in recent months, but it's not over yet. The most recent death toll stands at around 9,400 people. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Indonesia has officially invited North Korean leader Kim Jongun to an international meeting to be held in Jakarta in April. Pyongyang has not yet confirmed Kim's attendance at the Asian African Conference in Bandung, but South Korean government sources say his attendance is likely. If Kim does attend, it will be his first visit to a foreign country since taking power in 2011. Kim's grandfather, the North Korean regime's founder Kim Il-sung, attended that same event back in 1965 with Kim's father Kim Jong-il. South Korea's President Park Geun-hye has also been invited to the conference, fueling speculations about a meeting between the two. Pundits say, however, that President Park may not be able to attend due to other scheduled trips abroad. Others say Kim Jongun may meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the event. North Korea has conducted a military drill near the East Sea with some of its newest weaponry. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reported Saturday the artillery and landing exercise carried out by artillery forces of the 4th Corps and island defense units focused on training for striking and seizing an island. The 4th Corps led the North's deadly shelling of South Korea's Yeonpyeong-do Island back in November 2010. SA-2 surface-to-air missiles were mobilized for the exercise, along with 122mm self-propelled artillery and the Chinese-made Silkworm anti-ship missiles. The regime's young leader Kim Jongun made an appearance to inspect the drill himself. The North's media did not specify the timing of the drill nor the venue. Japanese lawmakers are at odds over the role of the country's self-defense forces overseas. The Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner, the New Komeito Party, remain far apart on the subject, with Komeito members questioning the Abe administration's proposal to remove geographical limitations on the force's activities. The proposal would create a permanent law allowing the overseas dispatch of its forces without reenacting special legislation each time and without the backing of any UN resolutions. Some Komeito members say it is too soon to consider the creation of a permanent law at a time when there has been no discussion on specific SDF missions overseas since a recent decision in July to reinterpret the Constitution. That change, if implemented, would be a drastic one from the force's original role of providing only non-lethal aid and would allow Tokyo to come to the aid of its allies overseas. After repeated breaches of a European-brokered truce for crisis in Ukraine, the U.S. and its European allies are mulling new sanctions against Russia. Our Shin Se-min has more on this report.
The United States and its European allies are considering a new round of sanctions against Russia for its involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told reporters in London on Saturday, following repeated ceasefire violations by pro-Russian separatists, breaching a European-brokered truce signed in Minsk by German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande. The deal called for both sides to withdraw heavy weaponry, which still hasn't happened yet.
If this failure continues, make no mistake, there will be further consequences, including consequences that would place added strains on Russia's already troubled economy.
Kerry also said the U.S. had not yet ruled out the option of arming Ukrainian troops with lethal weapons. In addition, he said satellite imagery confirms that Russia has been supporting the pro-Russian separatists. Russia has long denied its forces are fighting in Ukraine. In the midst of all this, a prisoner exchange has been made. It's the first and a rare sign of progress towards implementation of the peace deal reached in February 12th. The Ukrainian president said nearly 140 Ukrainian soldiers were traded for 52 separatist activists late Saturday, and officials from Kiev said more soldiers would be released soon. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Shifting gears to the cultural front, every field has a pioneer or a legendary figure. The late Ji Younghee, considered the guardian of Korean folk music. Ji preserved the music during Japan's colonial rule of Korea and even made inroads into Europe and America. Our Kim Min-ji has more on this story.
What you're listening to is the Haegum Sanjo, a genre of folk music involving the traditional Korean string instrument haegum. A master of the genre was Ji Younghee, who was referred to in Korea as the father of Korean folk music. It may not be a familiar name, but Ji, who is honored in his country as an intangible cultural asset, is considered a legendary figure who made great contributions to Korean music. Born in 1909, Ji spent most of his life preserving and developing folk music.
Ji Younghee created jobs for musicians who were mistreated at the time and helped foster an environment for them to be respected. And if it hadn't been for his efforts to transcribe the music, Korean folk would never have existed.
Ji also took his passion to the international level. Through performances in Europe and America, including at Carnegie Hall in 1964, he was able to demonstrate the excellence of traditional Korean music.
Ji Younghee had a dream in disseminating our traditional folk music to the people in America and across the world. When he first went to France and he did a traditional performance, the people there, the coordinators, they were just overwhelmed with the music, and they actually complimented them, saying that your music exceeds our Western music and it is even greater than ours.
He also modified the instruments to create a larger range of tones, just like the ones that are still used today. His keepsakes, from his bicycle and passport to his manuscripts, are still preserved, and his works are still performed and loved to this day by Koreans and non-Koreans alike.
I'm enjoying the performance very much. It's beautiful music. It is very different from Western music, but it's interesting to hear.
Today, the members of his family, some of the musicians themselves, are living proof of Ji's achievements, and they have since taken up the mantle of promoting the uniqueness of traditional Korean folk music. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And now moving on to weather. Yellow dust warnings have been issued nationwide, so keep that in mind if you're choosing to step outdoors. Tomorrow, sunlight will start Monday morning at a chilly -3 degrees Celsius. The mercury will float above zero later in the day, but strong winds mean you will need to dress very warm. Now let's check out the weather conditions outside of Korea, in your neck of the woods and around the world. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. For more, do tune back at 10 p.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.